I was 76 the morning I found out my own blood had lifted exactly $42,800 out of my retirement like it was pocket change. Funny thing is, you'd think a moment like that would come with some big dramatic explosion. Shouting, sirens, maybe a heart attack. But for me, it happened in the quiet hum of my kitchen in Dayton, Ohio, sunlight slanting across the table, dust drifting like it had nowhere better to be. You're probably thinking, how does a man not notice $42,000 disappearing? I asked myself the same damn question. But when you trust someone, really trust them, you don't expect to get stabbed in the back by a face you once held as a baby. It was June 12, 2022. 10:14 a.m. I remember the exact time because the coffee maker beeped right when the email popped up. The smell of burnt Folgers hung in the air as I squinted at my laptop, the screen too bright for my old eyes. A message from First Federal Credit Union. Unusual account activity detected. Please review the attached document. I clicked it open, expecting some fraudulent gas station charge in Nevada or a stolen card number. Instead, I saw line after line of transfers. Same recipient, same date spacing, amounts creeping up like someone testing how asleep I really was. 42,800, I whispered. My mouth went dry. My hand shook so bad the mouse skittered across the screen. A voice cracked the quiet. "Morning, Grandpa," my grandson Evan said as he came in through the back door like he owned the place. 23 years old, smelling faintly of cheap cologne and overconfidence. "You eat yet?" I swallowed hard. "No, not yet." He walked past me, opened the fridge, grabbed a Gatorade, didn't even look at me. That part cut deeper than the theft. "You're up early," he said. "I had some things to check," I murmured. He finally glanced at the laptop. "Something wrong?" I looked right at him, right into those same blue eyes he'd had since he was a toddler. Eyes that used to light up when I pushed him on the swing behind this same house. Eyes that now flickered just a little too fast. "Bank emailed me," I said. That was it. That was all I said. His hand froze on the Gatorade cap. "Oh," he replied too casual. "About what?" That's when I saw it, the faint tightening in his jaw, the swallow that came a second too late. It hit me like a hammer to the chest. He knew. He damn well knew. I didn't confront him, not that day. I just nodded, closed the laptop slowly and said, "Probably nothing." But inside, something cracked. Not a loud break, a tiny fracture, quiet and deadly, the kind that spreads. He took a long sip, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Let me know if you need help with anything." That line burned, because help was exactly what I thought he'd been giving me for the past year, driving me to doctor appointments, handling online bill pay, updating my phone, setting up safer banking apps. I thought he was stepping up, thought he was becoming a man. Turns out he was just getting better at reaching into my pockets without bending down. When he left, door clicking softly behind him, I opened the email again. I stared at those transfer logs until the screen blurred. My pulse thudded in my ears. $42,800, taken in small bites across 7 months. I could have called the bank. I could have called the police. Hell, I could have called the Lord himself. But I sat there instead, fingers pressed against my temples, trying to breathe through the betrayal settling into my bones. You don't understand until it happens to you. When someone you love steals from you, it's not the money. It's the way it hollows you out, makes you doubt your own damn mind, makes you wonder if you missed every sign, every hint, every gut warning along the way. The refrigerator hummed loudly. A truck rumbled past outside. Somewhere 2 houses down, a dog barked. And I just sat there, a 76-year-old man in a faded flannel shirt, realizing he'd been played by the kid he once taught how to tie shoelaces. That was the moment right there when something in me shifted. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to crumble. No, I made myself a quiet promise in that kitchen. I would get every dollar back, and he would learn exactly who he stole from. But revenge at my age isn't loud. It isn't fast. It isn't reckless. It's patient. And that was the day I started planning. Before everything went sideways, before the bank emails, before the lies, before the look in Evan's eyes that told me he didn't see a grandfather anymore but an easy target. I lived a quiet, steady kind of life. The sort of life a man earns after 76 years of work, mistakes, small victories, and stubborn survival. I want you to understand who I was before the fracture, because revenge only makes sense when you know what was lost first. I spent 40 years at Delco Manufacturing in Dayton, running presses and later supervising the younger guys when my knees gave out. I wasn't special, just reliable. Showed up early, stayed late, brought donuts on Fridays. That's the Midwest for you. You build a life out of simple routines and the people who stick by you. My wife Linda passed in 2014, pancreatic cancer. Quick, cruel, the kind of grief that settles heavy like wet snow on a roof you're not sure is strong enough. After she died, this house felt too big, too quiet, too full of echoes of what used to be. Thanksgiving used to mean a full table. After she was gone, it meant box stuffing and football in silence. I thought loneliness was going to bury me before anything else, but then Evan started showing up again. He was 19 then, skinny kid, scruffy beard, always carrying some college textbook he never seemed to open. He'd flop onto my couch, grab the remote and say, "Grandpa, you got anything to eat?" I'd pretend to grumble, but truth is, I loved it. Loved having a voice in the house again, someone to cook for, someone who laughed at my old stories even if I told them 10 times. He'd help me with the little things too, setting up my new phone, updating my TV, explaining how to use online banking. "It's safer this way," he'd say, tapping on the screen like he was born knowing how it all worked. When my arthritis got worse and driving became harder, he offered to take me to the VA clinic. When my hearing aid glitched, he handled the customer service calls because "they're a pain in the ass, Grandpa, let me do it." He even came over to fix my porch light during the ice storm of 2021, slipping on the steps and laughing the whole way down. "You need better shoes," I told him. "You need traction pads on this death trap," he shot back. Those were good days, real good. Days that made me feel like maybe I wasn't drifting toward the end quite as fast as I feared. And that's what makes betrayal hurt more than the missing money. You lose the version of someone you believed in. My daughter Corinne, Evan's mother, tried to warn me once. It was Christmas Eve, 2021. Snow dusted the windows and the oven smelled like ham just the way Linda used to make it. We stood at the sink, washing dishes when she said quietly, "Dad, Ethan told me Evan's been having money problems." I rinsed a glass and shook my head. "College kids always have money problems." "No," she said, drying her hands. "Not tuition problems, gambling problems." I chuckled nervously. "Oh, come on, he's not like that." She looked at me, really looked at me. "Dad, you see the best in people. That's not always a good thing." I dismissed it, told myself she was worrying too much, told myself she didn't understand him like I did, told myself he just needed guidance, not suspicion. I ignored the warning signs too, like when he asked to borrow $300 in early 2022 and paid it back 2 months late, or when he said he needed my banking login temporarily to help me set up bill pay. I didn't think twice. Why would I? He was my grandson. I'd survived Vietnam, a factory accident that nearly took my hand, the death of my wife, and 2 recessions. But the idea that someone from my own bloodline would gut my savings, that never even crossed my mind. Evan kept showing up throughout 2021 and early 2022, and I kept trusting him. I thought I was watching a young man step into adulthood. Turns out, I was watching a young man learn how to hide desperation behind helpfulness. Looking back, there were moments I should have paid attention to. The way he'd get jittery sometimes, tapping his leg nonstop. The way he avoided eye contact when I asked how school was going. The way he flinched when I mentioned maybe checking my accounts just to stay sharp. All little clues, all easy to miss when you're blinded by love. I wasn't a dumb man, but I was a hopeful one. And hope is a dangerous thing when someone sees it as weakness. If I'd known then what I know now, if I'd recognized that he wasn't driving me to appointments out of kindness, but out of opportunity, I might have locked every part of my life behind a password he couldn't guess. But I didn't. I let him in. I handed him my trust like an old wallet worn soft from years of use. And he slipped his hand inside without hesitation. The day before I discovered the missing money, Evan had come over to replace a light bulb in the hallway. He told me he'd snagged it from Home Depot on his way over. "No charge," he said with a grin. I thanked him. I didn't know he'd already charged me more than he could ever pay back. Those days, the quiet dinners, the drives, the small errands, those were the memories that made what came next feel like a blade twisting slow. Because the real betrayal doesn't start when the theft happens. It starts way earlier, when you still believe you're safe. You ever notice how betrayal doesn't come at you like a lightning strike? No, lightning would almost be merciful. Betrayal sneaks in slow, quiet, soft-footed, like a draft slipping under a door you didn't realize was cracked open. Looking back, the first crack didn't happen the morning I saw the missing $42,800. No, it happened long before, with a moment so small I almost forgot it. That's how these things start, not with chaos, with a whisper. It was early April 2022, a windy Tuesday. I remember that because the damn trash bins kept blowing down the driveway, and I had to hobble out with my cane and write them twice. My arthritis had been flaring up something fierce that week, and I was sitting in my recliner, rubbing my knee, watching reruns of MASH when Evan came in unannounced. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, a little too loudly like he'd just rushed over. His cheeks were flushed, not from the cold, something else. "Door was unlocked?" I asked. He gave a quick smile. "You always leave it unlocked." I shouldn't have, but habits die slowly, especially for men who lived half their lives in towns where neighbors kept spare keys under ceramic frogs. He plopped onto the couch, pulling out his phone. His leg bounced, fast, jittery like a piston misfiring. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. He glanced at me. "You good on your bills this month?" "Far as I know," I said. "Why?" He shrugged. "Just checking. You know I can help with the online stuff. It's easier for me to handle it." "That's so?" I looked at him over the rim of my glasses. There was something in his tone, too casual, too quick, like he'd rehearsed it. "Yeah," he said. "Actually, remember your login. I needed to update the bill pay system. New security update." That should have been the moment I snapped awake. Should have been the moment I stopped the bleeding before the wound ever opened. But instead I said, "Well, all right," and handed him the notepad from the junk drawer, the one where I kept my passwords written in pencil. Sloppy, I know, but I grew up in an era where the only people you had to worry about stealing from you were wearing masks and carrying crowbars. Evan didn't even thank me. He just took the pad, snapped a picture with his phone, and tossed it back on the counter. That little moment, him not writing it down, but taking a picture, that was the first wrong note in a song I should have listened to harder. "Did you eat yet?" I asked, trying to lighten the air. "No," he said, standing abruptly. "Gotta go, I'm meeting someone." Someone, not a name. I didn't press it. But when he left, he didn't give me that usual smile, the one I'd grown used to. Instead, he hurried out, shoulders tense, like he was running late to something he didn't want me asking about. That was the first crack. The second came 2 weeks later on a Thursday, when I checked my mailbox and found a letter from statewide auto lenders addressed to Evan at my address. I held it under the porch light, squinting at the bold red letters. "Final notice past due." I didn't open it, wasn't my business, but my gut stirred uneasily. When Evan arrived that evening with takeout burgers, I asked him calmly, "Anything I should know about? I got mail for you." His face tightened instantly. "What? Why would they send stuff here?" "I don't know," I said, "but they did." He held out his hand too fast. "Give it to me." I did. He slid it into his jacket pocket without opening it. "You all right?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, too quick again. "Just a mix-up, don't worry about it." But that was the problem. I did worry. I worried because his voice carried the same edge I used to hear in guys at the plant when they'd maxed out their credit and didn't want their wives to know. Still, I didn't push. I'm not proud of that, but love makes you hold your tongue when you shouldn't. Then came the third crack, the one that should have woken me up completely. One night in May, around 9 p.m., Evan called me. He never called that late. "Grandpa, can you do me a favor?" His voice was tight, strained. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just can you check if a text came through on your phone? It might be from the bank." "Why would the bank text me at this hour?" "Security stuff," he said. "You know they send codes sometimes. Did you get anything?" I looked at my flip phone on the table. One new message. I opened it. "Your verification code is 559,882. "Yeah," I said. "I got something." "Good," he said, almost out of breath. "Can you read me the code?" I hesitated, a long, heavy second. "Evan, why do you need it?" "Grandpa, come on," he snapped. "I'm trying to fix your bill pay. Just give me the code before it expires." A cold feeling slid down my spine, slow, unwelcome. Something in his tone wasn't right. He wasn't asking, he wasn't helping. He was desperate. "Grandpa," he barked again, "the code." For the first time in our whole relationship, I didn't answer him right away. I looked at that number glowing on my screen, 559,882. I thought about the loan notice, the jittery leg, the picture of my passwords, the late-night call. "Grandpa," he said again, softer this time, "please." He'd never said please like that, not strained, not cracked at the edges. "No," I said finally. Silence. What?" His voice shrank, small like a boy caught red-handed. "I'm not giving you the code," I said. "Not until you tell me exactly what you're doing." "I told you," he stammered. "It's for your account." No bank sends codes without explanation, and not at 9 at night. The line stayed quiet long enough that I heard my own heartbeat. Then he said, "Fine, forget it," and hung up. Just like that. I sat there staring at the phone, feeling something heavy shift inside me. That was the moment the shape of the truth began to form, blurry at the edges, but there. He wasn't helping me. He was helping himself, and using me to do it. But still, I didn't call the bank, didn't call my daughter, didn't change my passwords, didn't shut the door that was already wide open. Why? Because I loved the kid. Because I didn't want to believe it. Because a man my age doesn't have many branches left on the family tree, and I wasn't ready to snap one off. The real crack, the one that split everything clean through, came the night before I discovered the missing $42,800. It came in the form of a voicemail. I didn't see the call when it came in. My phone was plugged into the charger by the recliner. When I picked it up at 11:04 p.m., I saw a missed call from Evan 1 minute prior. One new voicemail. 9 seconds long. I pressed play. A muffled voice, Evan S., whispering into the phone. "If he checks it tomorrow, we're screwed, I thought you said." Then a second voice, one I didn't recognize, sharp and annoyed. "Relax, old people don't check statements, he's fine." Clicking. I played it again. And again. And again. My stomach dropped lower each time. That was the crack. The moment the bridge gave way. The moment I stopped making excuses. Something was wrong. Something was deeply, deliberately wrong. And by the next morning, when that bank email arrived at 10:14 a.m., telling me everything I didn't want to believe, I knew the cracks had become a fault line running straight through the last piece of family I trusted. But that was only the beginning of the collapse. The thing about truth is, it doesn't arrive politely. It barges in, kicks the door wide open, and leaves you standing in your own living room wondering how you missed all the signs tacked to the walls. For me, the truth came not in one piece, but in a cascade, each blow landing harder than the last. And it started the morning after that voicemail. The morning I opened the email from First Federal Credit Union and saw the missing $42,800 laid out plain as day. But that wasn't the shattering moment. No, the numbers were just the match. The explosion came later. Let me take you back to that morning. I sat at my kitchen table, the one Linda and I bought in 1989 at a yard sale on Maple Street, staring at a screen that suddenly felt radioactive. The transfers weren't random, they were methodical. Same recipient, E. Marshall, sometimes Evan M., sometimes the name didn't show at all. Just Zelle transfer with a note like utilities or repairs. Repairs. Utilities. For who? The kid barely lived in his own skin half the time. My hand trembled as I scrolled. 7 months of theft, each transfer small enough not to trigger alarms, at least not until the pattern turned bold. $800 here, $1,200 there, $2,000 on March 18th with the note car insurance. He didn't even own insurance. My throat tightened, my vision tunneled, something inside my chest felt like a fist clenching slow. Now I should have called the bank immediately, should have called my daughter, should have frozen the account. But I sat there, feeling the shock settle in like cold water rising past my ankles. And as I sat, something twisted deeper inside me, pain mixed with something hotter. Anger, the old kind. The kind I hadn't felt since Vietnam, when one wrong move could cost a man more than money. Still, that wasn't the shattering moment. Around noon, after pacing the house for an hour, I grabbed my coat, my heavy canvas one, and drove down to the bank on Main Street. I hadn't driven much lately, but adrenaline has a way of smoothing out arthritis when truth is burning holes through your gut. Inside, I met with a woman named Sharon, late 50s, kind eyes. She pulled up my account and went quiet, too quiet. "Mr. Wilkinson," she said finally, "these transfers, do you recognize them?" "No," I said, "I want to know where they went." She tapped keys, her mouth tightening. "They went to an account under the name Evan Marshall." I closed my eyes, like someone had slapped me clean across the face. "Is there any chance," she continued, "you gave him permission?" I opened my eyes and looked at her. "Ma'am, I trusted that boy, but I didn't give him permission to take one damn dime." She nodded slowly. "We can file a fraud report." "I'm not filing anything yet," I interrupted. "Not until I talk to him." Her brow furrowed. "Sir, with family situations, emotions can." I said, "Not yet." She backed off. I apologized later in my head, but at that moment my voice wasn't entirely my own. I left the bank, got back into my truck and sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My breath fogged the windshield. Every memory of Evan, every breakfast, every ride, every small moment, felt like a betrayal layered on betrayal. Still, that wasn't the shattering moment. The shattering moment came at 4:23 p.m. I remember the time because the sun was hanging low and orange, the way it gets in June when the air smells like cut grass and hot pavement. Evan pulled into my driveway in his beat-up Honda Civic. I saw him from the window. He walked up the path carrying that same fake confidence he'd been wearing for months. He knocked once before letting himself in. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, strolling in with a weak smile. "Everything okay?" I didn't say a word, not at first. I just sat there at the table, the bank statement printed out beside me. His eyes flicked to it, too fast, too sharp. He swallowed. "I need to ask you something," I said quietly. "Sure," he replied, trying to keep his voice level. "What's up?" I slid the statement toward him. He didn't touch it. "Tell me," I said, "why you took my money." His breath hitched just barely, then he shook his head. "Grandpa, I didn't take anything. What are you talking about?" "You transferred $42,800 to yourself," I said. "Don't lie to me." His face went pale. No, that's wrong. That must be someone hacked. Someone with your name, your bank, your login, your security updates." "Grandpa, Don't," I said, voice cracking. "Don't insult me more than you already have." He closed his mouth. His jaw tightened. Then he said the sentence that snapped something in me, clean, irrevocable. "It's not like you needed it." You ever hear words that feel like getting shot in the chest? That's what those felt like. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I messed up." Not "let me fix this." Just, "It's not like you needed it." I leaned back, stunned. "I earned that money," I said. 40 years on the line, 40 years of cold mornings and bad backs. That money is my life, my future. He didn't meet my eyes. I was going to pay it back eventually. With what? I snapped. Your lies, your loans, your gambling. His head jerked up. Who told you that? You did, I said quietly. Every time your voice shook, every time you rushed, every time you needed a code. He stepped back, face twisting, anger, fear, guilt, something uglier underneath. Look, it's complicated. No, I said, it's simple. You stole from me and you kept stealing. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. Grandpa, please, I was in a bad spot. I had people. Listen, you don't understand the pressure I slammed my hand on the table, hard enough to make him jump. I am not your bank. I am not your bailout. I am your grandfather. He froze. That was the moment, right there, when I saw the truth in his eyes. He didn't see me as family anymore. He saw me as a way out, a wallet on legs, a weak old man who wouldn't fight back. And then he said something I will never forget as long as I live. If you go to the bank, I swear I'll tell everyone you're losing it. I'll get Mom to take over your accounts. You'll just make things worse for yourself. My heart stopped. Literally stopped for a second. He was threatening me. Me? The man who raised him, fed him, taught him how to throw a baseball. You do that, I whispered. He looked away. I don't want to, but you pushed me. That was the shattering moment. Not the theft. Not the lies. Not even the threat. It was seeing what he had become, someone who would burn down the last good thing in his life just to save his own skin. Something inside me hardened, slowly, quietly, permanently. And I realized, with a clarity so sharp it hurt. If I didn't handle this right, I'd lose more than money. I'd lose my freedom, my dignity, my mind, at least the version of it he wanted people to believe. I looked at him one last time, the grandson I'd loved more than anything, and I felt the last piece of trust fall away like ash. Get out, I said softly. He blinked. Grandpa. Get out. He hesitated, then left without another word. The screen door clicked shut. The house went still. And I sat there long after the sun went down, listening to the quiet creak of the floorboards, feeling my pulse throb in my ears. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I wasn't confused. I was awake. Wide awake. And I knew one thing as clear as I knew my own name. I wasn't going to let him destroy me. Not without a fight. You want to know the truth? The worst part wasn't the money, wasn't even the betrayal. It was what happened to me in the weeks that followed, what I let myself become. People think getting old means you're fragile, soft, that you break easy. They don't realize the real danger isn't physical, it's emotional. When someone you love guts you from the inside, the wounds don't bleed where anyone can see. They pool quietly. They sour. They press on old scars until you're not sure which pain is new and which has been rotting there for years. After Evan walked out of my house that day, leaving the echo of his threat hanging in the doorway, I felt something I hadn't felt since 1971, back when I stood on a dusty road in Da Nang after losing 2 friends in the same damn ambush. That feeling of being hollowed out and left behind. The first nights were the worst. I barely slept. I'd lie there in the dark, the old ceiling fan whirring above me like a tired propeller blade, my mind racing. Every sound became a threat, the house settling, a car passing outside, the distant bark of a dog. My nerves felt stripped bare, like someone had taken sandpaper to my insides. And worst of all, I kept thinking maybe he was right. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe I had forgotten something. Maybe I had given him permission and just didn't remember. That's the cruelest part of aging. Your own mind becomes a battlefield you're never sure you're winning. One night, about a week after our confrontation, I found myself stalking through the house at 2:00 a.m., opening drawers, checking locks, looking for signs someone had been there. I don't know what I expected. A broken window, missing objects, footprints. I wasn't even sure who I thought might have come in. Evan, some guy he owed money to, a ghost from a life I barely remembered. But of course, the house was exactly as still and lonely as ever. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd confronted him, and stared at the bank papers scattered across it. My hand hovered over the phone, tempted to call someone. Anyone. My daughter Corinne. The police. The bank. The VA counselor I hadn't spoken to in years. But every time I imagined explaining it, Evan's words echoed. If you go to them, I'll tell them you're losing it. And I could already picture it, the sympathetic looks, the forced patience, the quiet suggestion of an evaluation, the meetings about competency, the pamphlets about support options, the whispered conversations about next steps. At 76, you don't get second chances once people think your mind is slipping. I'd seen it happen to my neighbor, old Mr. Pickens. One medication mix-up, and suddenly his kids were circling like vultures, whispering about assisted living. He went from mowing his lawn to having his keys taken away in a matter of weeks. I wasn't going to let that be me. But the more I thought about everything, the more I wondered if Evan was right. I couldn't remember the exact moment he'd asked for my account login. Couldn't remember what I'd said the day he installed the banking app. Maybe I had clicked something I didn't understand. I felt like a man standing on ice he wasn't sure was solid. Then came the worst moment of that descent. I had a doctor's appointment at the VA clinic, routine checkup. My blood pressure was high, and the doctor, a young woman named Dr. Patel, asked me, "Have you been under any unusual stress lately?" And for a split second, something in me cracked open. My throat tightened. My eyes burned. The truth was right there on the tip of my tongue. But then her expression shifted. That subtle tilt of the head. That quiet look doctors give when they're assessing you, not just listening. And I froze. Because I saw it, the possibility of becoming a case file, a note in the system, a quiet suggestion in my chart, patient may be cognitively declining. So I forced a smile and said, "Nothing out of the ordinary." She nodded, typed something, and moved on, but I knew she didn't believe me. That night I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling like my entire world was collapsing from the inside. Evan had taken more than money. He'd taken the stability I'd built my whole life on, the trust I used to have in my own mind. You know what loneliness feels like at 76? It's not quiet. It's loud. It's a roar in your ears telling you you're on your own, and no one's coming to save you. I started skipping meals. My coffee tasted like metal. The house felt colder even though it was. My thoughts got darker, heavier. There were moments, brief but sharp, when I wondered if maybe this was it. Maybe my life would just shrink day by day until I faded into the background, the way so many old men do. But in that darkness, something kept me going. Pride, stubbornness, anger, maybe all three. One night, maybe 2 weeks after the confrontation, I got out of bed, went to the living room and sat in my old recliner. I grabbed my wallet from the coffee table and took out a worn photograph, me and Evan at the county fair in 2006. He was about 7, missing a front tooth, holding my hand like I was the whole damn world. I stared at that picture for a long, long time. My chest hurt, my eyes stung. I whispered into the empty room, "What happened to you, kid?" Silence answered. And then slowly, like embers catching fire, something shifted. A realization. A hard, cold truth. If I didn't fight back, I'd lose everything. Not just my money. My dignity. My independence. My name. I wasn't going to let one broken branch bring down the whole tree. I might have been old, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And somewhere deep in that sleepless, haunted night, I made a decision that changed everything that came after. I wouldn't go down quietly, and I sure as hell wouldn't go down alone. But I couldn't do it on my own. I needed someone who'd believe me, someone who wouldn't see me as a burden or a confused old man. I just didn't know yet where that help would come from. You ever notice how the right people show up only after you've hit the lowest damn point a man can fall to? Not before. Not while you're stumbling. They appear when you're good and cracked open, when you've got no pride left to hide behind. For me, that person was Rosa Alvarez, a night shift nurse at the VA clinic in Dayton. I'd seen her a handful of times during blood pressure checks and medication reviews, but never thought much of it. She was maybe mid-40s, hair tied back, eyes sharp enough to see straight through you. The kind of woman who didn't waste time on nonsense. It was late July when everything started shifting in her orbit. The heat was brutal that month, heavy, wet heat that clung to your shirt and made the air feel thick enough to chew. I'd stopped sleeping again, my nights swallowed by thoughts of Evan, the money, the lies, the threat hanging over my head like a rusted blade. I went to the VA for a routine follow-up, blood pressure check, prescription refill. Truthfully, I just needed to be around people who weren't ghosts of my own worries. I must have looked like hell when I walked in because Rosa narrowed her eyes the second she saw me. "Mr. Wilkinson," she said, folding her clipboard against her hip, "you look about 3 degrees from collapsing. When's the last time you slept?" I shrugged. A man my age doesn't need much sleep. She gave me a look, not unkind, just the look of someone who's heard every lie in the book and doesn't have patience for a new edition. "Sit," she said, pointing to the exam bed. I sat. She wrapped the cuff around my arm, listened, frowned. "Your blood pressure's up again. Been a stressful month." "What kind of stress?" she asked. I hesitated long enough that she lowered the cuff and tilted her head. "Mr. Wilkinson, you coming apart on me." Something inside me cracked a little more. My breath hitched, and before I could stop myself, I said the words I'd been choking on for weeks. "My grandson stole $42,800 from me." Her expression didn't change. Not shock, not pity, just focus, like she'd switched on some internal gear. "When?" she asked. "Months, maybe longer, and he threatened me if I reported it." Rosa didn't look away, didn't give me the soft, condescending tone some people do when talking to old men. She just asked, "Did you?" "No," I said quietly. "Why?" "Because he said he'd tell everyone I'm slipping, that he'd take over my accounts, that he'd make me look incompetent." Rosa's jaw tightened. I couldn't tell if she was angry at me or for me. "Do you think you're slipping?" she asked. "No," I said, "but once someone plants that seed," I swallowed, "people see what they expect to see, not what's true." She nodded, slowly, like she understood that sentence too well. Then she said something that landed harder than any doctor's advice I'd heard in years. "So you're isolated, financially abused by a relative, losing sleep, and scared to tell anyone because they might believe him more than you." I winced. "Sounds pathetic when you put it like that." "It doesn't sound pathetic," she said firmly. "It sounds like every case of elder abuse I've ever seen in my 20 years of work." My head jerked up. "Every case?" "Yes, exactly like this." The room felt suddenly too small, like the truth was finally sitting down beside me instead of looming over me. Rosa set her clipboard on the counter and leaned against it, arms crossed. "Mr. Wilkinson," she said, "you need help. I need a way to prove I'm not losing it." "Same thing," she replied. "You're not going to win a battle like this alone, not against someone young, desperate, and manipulative. You need documentation, evidence, witnesses, someone in your corner who knows the system. And that someone is you." She cracked the faintest smile. "I know enough to point you the right direction." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "What do I do?" "First," she said, holding up a finger, "you get your banking documents printed out, every statement, every transfer, every alert." "I already did." "Good. Second, stop talking to your grandson. No calls, no texts, no letting him into your house. He can twist anything you say." I nodded. "I can do that." "Third," she said, lowering her voice, "you need someone who understands digital footprints." "Digital what now?" She chuckled. "Exactly. You need help from someone who knows the tech side. Did anyone ever help you set up your accounts, your Wi-Fi, your phone?" And that's when a name came to me, like a light bulb flickering on. Zach Harper. My next-door neighbor's kid. 17, always tinkering with computers. Fixed my router twice. Built his own gaming PC from parts I didn't even have the vocabulary to describe. Kind kid, quiet, polite. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I know someone. Good, she said. Ask him if he can help you gather evidence. Don't say it's for revenge. Say it's for protection. People help more when they understand the stakes. I swallowed hard. And what about authorities? Not yet, she said sharply. You go in right now with only your word and Evan will shred you. You need an airtight case before you say one word to anyone official. I rubbed my face. It all feels overwhelming. That's because you're trying to fight alone, she said. Stop doing that. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something inside me loosen. Not relief, but steadiness. Like I'd found a foothold on a cliff I'd been slipping down. Before I left, Rosa touched my shoulder gently. You're not crazy, Mr. Wilkinson. You're not slipping. Someone you trusted betrayed you. That's the beginning and the end of it. My eyes stung unexpectedly. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said. Just don't give up. That afternoon, the heat was brutal, the air thick, cicadas screaming from the trees as I walked across my lawn and knocked on the Harpers' door. Zach opened it, headphones around his neck, a confused smile on his face. Hey, Mr. Wilkinson, he said, everything all right? And I said the words that set the next stage of my life into motion, the stage where I stopped being a victim and started becoming something else entirely. Zach, I said quietly, I need your help, and what I'm about to tell you stays between us. His smile faded, he nodded, okay, come in. And just like that, the gathering began. You ever notice how, once you finally stand up and say, enough, the world stops feeling so damn heavy? Not lighter exactly, just clearer. Like someone cleaned the fog off a window you didn't realize had been smeared for months. That's how it felt walking into Zach Harper's basement workspace that afternoon. The place looked like mission control for a kid who should have been playing baseball instead of running circles around half the IT departments in Dayton. Monitors glowing, wires everywhere, the hum of machines that sounded more alive than I did some mornings. Zach pulled up a chair for me, one of those gaming ones with the high back and fancy stitching. I felt like a relic sitting in it, but he didn't treat me like one. So, he said gently, tell me what's going on. And I did. All of it. Evan, the transfers, the threats, the voicemail, the fear that I'd be painted as a senile old man the moment I tried to fight back. Zach didn't interrupt, not once. He didn't look at me with pity, didn't flinch. When I finished, he leaned back and let out a low whistle. That's messed up, he said, really messed up. Yeah, I murmured, it is. He tapped his mouse, the glow of his screen reflecting in his glasses. Okay, first things first, we need evidence, real evidence, stuff no one can explain away. That's what Rosa said. Rosa's smart, he replied. He wasn't wrong. Zach cracked his knuckles. All right, Mr. Wilkinson, here's what we're gonna do. Funny thing, he sounded like a kid, but he talked like a man who understood exactly how this world worked. Step 1, secure my accounts. You gotta change everything, he said. Passwords, recovery emails, two-factor authentication, and no writing it down anywhere. Memorize it. You think Evan might still be accessing it. I think he probably has been this whole time. That hit harder than I expected. Zach spent an hour walking me through new logins. He set up a separate recovery email, a new phone PIN, even disabled some feature I never knew existed, remote sign-ins. When we were done, he leaned in. All right, step 2. Which is? We find out exactly how he got in. He pulled up logs I didn't know banks even tracked, IP addresses, device types, timestamps of every login, waves of digital footprints spilling across the screen. There, Zach said, pointing. That's your iPad, that's your phone, that isn't you. A device labeled Pixel 4. Location, North Dayton. Login attempts at times I was asleep, at the doctor, or mowing my yard. My throat tightened. That's him. Yeah, Zach said softly, that's him. He printed everything, multiple copies, neatly organized. The kid was methodical. A part of me wondered how someone like him came from the same neighborhood where teenagers usually spent their afternoons scraping rust off old cars behind their dad's garages. Step 3, he continued. We build a timeline, a clean one, with dates, evidence, bank records, login logs, voicemail audio, and your notes. My notes. Yeah, you're gonna start writing stuff down. Every detail you remember, every conversation, every transfer you didn't authorize, every time he pressured you, everything. I'm not much of a writer. Doesn't matter, it just has to be true. I nodded slowly. All right. Zach printed a sheet with prompts, simple ones. When did you first give him access? What explanations did he give? What inconsistencies did you notice? When did he start acting differently? Did he ever ask for a code? Did he ever pressure you late at night? Any witnesses? Any physical evidence? The more I read, the more my stomach knotted. This is a lot, I murmured. It is, he said, because he stole a lot. That line hit harder than he probably meant it to. Step 4, Zach said, was about future-proofing. You can't talk to Evan right now, not a word. No texts, no calls, no contact. If he reaches out, don't respond. I hesitated, and if he shows up? Zach's jaw tightened. Then you don't open the door. That stung. Not because Zach was wrong. He wasn't. But because the idea of not opening the door for my own grandson felt like cutting off my own hand. But I nodded anyway. I understand. When I left Zach's that day, I expected to feel better, stronger, like a man stepping into the start of something. Instead, I felt something else. A strange, sharp awareness. Every sound on my street seemed louder. Every car passing felt suspicious. Every shadow looked like trouble with Evan's name on it. I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't losing it. I was waking up to a world I'd been too trusting to see clearly before. That night I sat at my kitchen table, Rose's advice in one pocket, Zach's timeline questions in the other, and wrote. For hours. My handwriting cramped, my fingers stiff, but my mind sharper than it had been in months. The more I wrote, the angrier I got. Not the loud, shouting kind. The cold kind men my age understand all too well. Anger that settles in your bones. Anger that focuses you. Anger that keeps you from collapsing. Around midnight, something hit me. I had allies, real ones. A nurse who didn't think I was crazy. A kid who knew how to trace digital lies. And my own damn sense of justice, which had woken up hungry. But I knew something else too. If I was going to bring Evan down, legally, cleanly, completely, I needed one more thing. A plan. A smart one. A patient one. A plan that made him expose himself. And I knew exactly how to start. Because the thing about young men like Evan, they can't resist easy money. They can't resist weakness. And they sure as hell can't resist a second chance to steal. All I had to do was give him one. But on my terms this time. All right, kid, I whispered into the empty house as the clock struck 12:47 a.m. Let's see how deep this hole goes. The trap wasn't set yet, but the pieces were sliding into place. There's a moment in a man's life where planning shifts to action, where the quiet work behind the scenes hardens into something sharper, something with teeth. For me, that moment came on an overcast Tuesday morning in August, when the air felt heavy with that storm-brewing stillness Ohio gets right before the sky splits open. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing the trap. Zach helped me set up everything, the phone logs, the digital footprint folders, the new account protections. Rosa coached me on what behaviors predators expect from an older victim, uncertainty, passivity, fear, and how to mimic them just enough to keep Evan from suspecting he was walking straight into his own grave. See, when you're old, people assume you're easy to manipulate. I decided to use that, wear it like armor. But before I could spring anything, I needed one thing. Evan had to come to me. He had to think he was in control. He had to believe the well was still producing water. He had to believe I was still the man he could bleed dry. So I called him. It took everything I had not to let the bitterness creep into my voice. I had to swallow my pride like broken glass. When he answered, his tone was the same slick, rushed tone he always used when he wanted something. "Grandpa, everything okay?" I cleared my throat and made my voice just a little shaky. "Well, no, not really. I might need your help." Silence on the other end, quick, calculating silence. I knew that silence well. It was the silence of a thief smelling opportunity. "What's wrong?" he asked, forcing concern into his voice like a kid forcing a shirt to fit. "Bank stuff," I said weakly. "I don't understand all of it." "Bank stuff," he repeated. "What kind?" "Just some online things. I think I messed something up." That did it. His voice brightened like a burglar hearing a window open. "I can come by. When?" "Whenever you can," I murmured. "I'd appreciate it." He showed up an hour later. I was sitting at the kitchen table, shaking just enough for effect, with a stack of old papers in front of me. Nothing important, just grocery receipts, fake password reminders, and a few old Medicare statements that would make the table look good and cluttered. The good kind of bait. Evan walked in without knocking, same as always. But this time I noticed everything. How he scanned the room, how he eyed my laptop, how his hands twitched just a bit. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile. "You okay?" "I'm all turned around," I said, rubbing my forehead. "I think the bank locked me out again." He exhaled like a man relieved the door was open. "Yeah, no problem. I can check it." He pulled out his phone, Pixel 4, same model Zach identified in the login logs, and sat across from me. "Just give me your login real quick." I let my hand shake as I slid a folded paper toward him. Not the real login. A decoy. One Zach created that would root his attempt into a secure mirrored environment, capturing his keystrokes, screen movements, and access attempt as evidence. Evan didn't notice a thing. He typed fast, leaning in, brow furrowed. Then he frowned. Says this account doesn't exist." "Oh," I said softly. "Did I maybe write it wrong? I'm sorry, my memory's been." That was the moment. His eyes flicked up to me, sharp and predatory. "Yeah," he said slowly, "you've been a little off lately." I swallowed hard, letting the shame burn on my face, letting him think he'd hit the nerve he wanted to hit. "I'm trying," I whispered. "Of course," he said, voice gentle, eyes cold. "It's okay, that's why I'm here." He reached for my laptop. That's when the trap tightened. The moment he connected to the mirrored site, a silent notification went straight to Zach's phone. Zach was watching from his setup next door, recording the entire session, timestamps, IP address, device ID, every keystroke Evan made. But Evan kept going, oblivious. "Okay," he said, typing again. "Let me try another way." "Another way?" "Yeah," he replied. "There's a back-end login you can use if you forget your password." There was. Not for legitimate users. But there was one for thieves. "Let me see your phone," he said casually. I handed it to him, my hands trembling just enough to sell the scene. He tapped, swiped, opened messages, and waited. Then my phone buzzed. A verification code came through. He glanced at it like it belonged to him. "Just read me the numbers," he said. "No," I said gently, "you can see it." He took the phone, typed in the code, and hit submit. That moment, that exact moment, Zach texted me a single word. "Got him." Everything was logged. Everything was time-stamped. Everything tied directly to Evan's device. Evan glanced up, gave me a polite, distracted smile. "You're all set, Grandpa. I'll come by next week to clean up a few things. Keep things running smooth." "Thank you," I said, forcing warmth into my tone. He stood, slipped his phone into his pocket, and left whistling softly. When the door closed behind him, the whole house felt still, too still, like the air itself knew something irreversible had just happened. I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, and whispered to myself, "Phase 1 is done." But this wasn't just about gathering proof anymore. It was about making Evan face what he'd done, in a way he couldn't wiggle out of, couldn't twist, couldn't lie his way around. I hadn't finished the trap. Not yet. There was still the weakness test. The one, Rosa insisted, would expose his intentions completely. The one I dreaded, because it meant letting him think he'd beaten me. And I knew damn well he would. Because predators can't resist the smell of an open wound. You ever notice how the truth doesn't explode all at once? It unspools, slow, like a frayed rope giving way strand by strand. And once it starts unraveling, there's no stitching it back together. Not for the liar, not for the thief, not for the man who thought he could gut his own grandfather and walk away clean. After Evan fell right into the mirrored login trap, Zach and I spent 3 straight evenings building what he called a bulletproof case. Not just strong, unbreakable. Every login attempt Evan made was documented. Every credential he tried to use. Every text message he sent to get verification codes. Every IP address tied to his apartment and his phone. Zach even pulled up metadata from Evan's device, timestamps lining up perfectly with stolen funds transfers. It was like watching puzzle pieces click together into a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't turn away from. But the hardest part, the part that tore at something deep inside me, was Rosa's final instruction. You need to give him one last opportunity to do the right thing and record it. Won't work, I told her. He won't confess. He doesn't need to confess, she replied. He just needs to be himself. Meaning manipulative. Meaning cruel. Meaning willing to exploit weakness. Men like Evan can't help it. You dangle vulnerability in front of them and they sink their teeth in. So I staged it. A weakness test. I called Evan 3 days after the mirrored login trap, my voice wavering just enough to sound worn, tired, frayed around the edges. Evan, I said, I think I made a mistake with my accounts again. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. He didn't miss a beat. You want me to come over? If you could, I whispered, I'm real confused. I hated saying those words. Hated how natural they must have sounded coming out of my mouth. Hated even more how fast he agreed. I'll be right there. That's when I set the recorder. Zach had installed an app on my phone that captured both sides of conversations automatically. Completely legal in Ohio, Rosa had checked. A one-party consent state. I sat at the kitchen table again, papers spread out, the house dim except for the flickering kitchen light I never replaced. When Evan walked in, he didn't see a man ready for war. He saw prey. His smile was gentle, false. The kind of smile con artists practice in the bathroom mirror. You all right? He asked, kneeling slightly like he was consoling a child. I don't know anymore, I whispered. I keep getting these bank notices. His eyes sharpened. Notices about what? Transfers, I said. Money I don't remember moving. He hesitated just for a flash. Then he softened his expression and said, That's probably nothing. Sometimes older people forget they did things. A line he rehearsed. A line he planned to use. A line meant to dig the grave he wanted to throw me in. My breath hitched, not because I believed him, but because I remembered all the times I had forgotten things this past year. A name, a date, a TV channel, little things that didn't matter until now when they suddenly mattered more than they should have. He sat across from me and gently slid a paper toward himself. What was this for? He asked. It's a bank record, I murmured. I don't remember authorizing that. He sighed, took my hand and gave it a sympathetic squeeze. Grandpa, maybe it's time we talked about letting someone help you. Help me how? I asked. By taking over your accounts, just until you're stable. My pulse thudded in my ears. There it was. The goal line. His end game. Power of attorney. Full financial control. The legal theft to cover the illegal one. What do you mean? I asked softly. It's not safe for you to have access anymore, he said. You're getting mixed up. You don't want things to get out of control. Do you think I'm losing my mind? I whispered. He paused, measured, calculated. I think, he said gently, you're not the same as you used to be. The recorder caught every word, every tone, every manipulation. He pressed on. If you let me take over, just temporarily, I can fix all this. Make sure you're not making mistakes, protect you. From who? I asked. He hesitated. Then, as if he were doing me a mercy, he leaned in close and whispered, from yourself. That line hit like a punch, hard enough that I had to grip the table. And he continued softly, if anyone asks about the missing money, I can say it was all confusion, that you accidentally sent it to me, that you thought I was paying bills for you. My stomach turned. He was rehearsing my insanity defense, preparing to bury me with it. And he didn't even blink. Then he said the final nail. No one will blame you. You're old. People understand these things. Something inside me, something deep and old and tough as nails, snapped. Not in anger, not in grief, in clarity. I stood up slowly, my knees cracked, my hands steadied on the table. Evan looked confused. Grandpa, he asked, standing too, are you okay? I looked him dead in the eyes. Honey, I said quietly, I've never been more okay in my life. He froze. What do you mean? I stepped back just enough to look at him fully. And then I reached into my pocket, pulled out the phone Zach had prepared, and turned the screen toward him. A live recording interface, the waveform bouncing with every sound. His last sentence recorded perfectly. He went pale, paler than I'd ever seen him. What is that? He stammered. Evidence, I said softly, evidence of exactly who you are. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You tricked me. No, I said, voice calm, you revealed yourself. His eyes darted toward the door, panic flooding in. This isn't legal, he sputtered. It's perfectly legal in Ohio, I replied. One-party consent. He shook his head, backing away. You can't do this. You can't, Grandpa, listen. I did listen, I said, for months, and you took that as permission. He swallowed hard. Please don't report this. That's not up to me anymore, I said. It's up to the case file. Case file, he whispered. I nodded. The one Zach and I built. The one Rosa helped me understand. The one with every login, every stolen penny, every threat, every manipulation. His face collapsed. Fear pooling in his eyes. Real fear. The kind that comes when the predator realizes the prey was never prey at all. You don't understand, he said, voice breaking. If this gets out. It already has, I said quietly. Because the trap wasn't just set. It was closed. You'd think the end of a story like this would come with fireworks, sirens, slammed doors, handcuffs, courtroom speeches. But real justice, the kind an old man earns with patience and precision, doesn't explode. It settles, quiet and heavy, like fresh snow on a roof that's been creaking too long. After Evan's face collapsed into that terrified pale mask, the room stayed silent for a long stretch. I could hear the hum of the kitchen light, the distant rumble of traffic on Wilmington Pike, even the faint tick of the old wall clock Linda hung the year she retired from the school district. You don't have to do this, he whispered. I can fix it. You can't, I said gently, because you never tried to, not once. He kept backing toward the door, breath shallow, eyes darting like a cornered animal. When his hand hit the doorknob, he paused, not to run but to break. His shoulders slumped, his body sagging with the weight of a truth he'd been outrunning for months. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, he said. It was supposed to be temporary. Son, I said softly, every thief says that. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat, didn't shout. I just let the truth sit between us, solid, undeniable. I loved you, I said. More than you know, I trusted you with everything. His eyes filled, but not with the kind of grief that comes from hurting someone. It looked more like fear of consequences, not regret for the damage done. I'm sorry, he whispered. And maybe a part of him was. but sorry doesn't put $42,800 back in a man's retirement. Sorry doesn't undo the gaslighting, the threats, the slow erosion of a grandfather's dignity. Evan, I said, this isn't about punishing you. It's about protecting myself. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. Are you turning me in? The truth sat heavy on my tongue. I didn't want to destroy my grandson's life. God knows that's the last thing I ever wanted. But I thought about Rose's sharp eyes, about Zach's careful folders, about the nights I'd sat alone questioning my own mind. I thought about pride and survival and the quiet dignity a man should be allowed to keep in his final years. No, I said, not yet. He looked up, startled. I'm giving you one chance, I continued. One, you will return every dollar, not when you feel like it, not someday, now. He blinked rapidly. I don't have it. I know, I said. So you're going to get it legally, through work, through arrangements you will show me in writing, and you're going to sign a confession, a real one with dates and amounts. His mouth fell open. A confession, Grandpa. It stays with me, I said, as long as you make this right. And if I do, his voice cracked. Then I take everything we gathered, everything Zach documented, everything you said today, and I walk it straight into the county prosecutor's office. He swallowed so hard I heard it. That's the deal, I said, your only deal. The air in the house went still again. He looked at the floor, at the door, at me, and then finally he nodded. Okay, he whispered, okay, I'll do it. It didn't happen overnight. Real repairs never do. Evan found work, real work, not the odd jobs he used as smoke screens. A warehouse job on Monument Avenue first, then a delivery route for a medical supply company. Grueling hours, humbling work, the kind that teaches a young man the value of sweat again. Every 2 weeks he brought me a payment, sometimes small, sometimes decent, always with eyes lowered. I kept a ledger. Old habits die hard. It took a year and 4 months for him to return every dollar. $42,800. Paid back one exhausting piece at a time. He signed the confession. I never used it. It sits in my safe, my insurance policy, not my revenge. He stopped asking for codes. Stopped showing up unannounced. Stopped talking down to me like I was slipping into fog. Sometimes he'd sit on the porch steps after giving me a payment and say nothing at all. Just stare out at the Ohio sky like he was trying to find his reflection in it. One evening near the end of it all, he said quietly, Grandpa, thank you for not turning me in. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the same boy who walked into my kitchen months before with greed in his eyes. Life had sanded the sharp edges down. I didn't spare you, I said. I gave you a chance to fix what you broke. What you do with that chance is up to you. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand. I'm trying. I know, I said, and I meant it. People ask sometimes, was it worth it? The planning, the deception, the trap, the long road to repayment. I'll tell you what I told Rosa the last time I saw her at the clinic. It wasn't about the money. It was about getting myself back. She smiled at me the way only someone who's seen the worst of people can smile. You did more than that, she said. You got your power back. Maybe she was right. Zach still swings by now and then, usually with some strange gadget in his backpack or a story about college applications. Kids going places. When he gets into whatever program chooses him, I plan to be front row at his graduation. Evan, we're rebuilding. Slowly, carefully. Trust doesn't grow back where it was cut. It grows in new places with different soil, but it can grow. Some mornings he brings me donuts, not because I need them. Because he does. I don't know how much time I have left. Men my age don't make long-term plans, but I know this. I didn't let myself be erased. I didn't let myself be dismissed. And I didn't let the last years of my life be defined by someone else's greed. I fought back. Quietly, smartly, completely. I took back everything he stole, including myself. And that's the real ending.